CA final students, so welcome back, and we are going to discuss in this video charge under CGST Act. So this particular chapter is very important because here we are going to learn about the RCM and then e-commerce operator provision, and we have one amendment related to e-commerce operator also. So without further delay, we are moving on to the quick revision of this. So in this charge under CGST, levy and collection under CGST, we have three subsections. First, section 9 deals with the levy and collection. Section 9 subsection 1 says that except on alcoholic liquor for human consumption and denatured extra neutral alcohol and rectified spirit used in manufacture of alcohol, on all other products GST is applicable, but that is subject to section 9 subsection 2. Section 9 subsection 2 says that on 5 petroleum products, till the time GST Council decides, there is no GST levy, that is crude oil, petrol, aviation turbine fuel, then high speed diesel and natural gas. Then 9.3 says that there are some list of notified goods and notified services. With respect to this notified goods and services, liability to pay GST is on recipient, whereas in case of 9.4 there is a promoter or builder who is making purchases from a unregistered person. In that case, the promoter or builder is required to pay GST under RCM. And then 9 subsection 5 deals with notified services. If those services are provided through e-commerce operator, the liability to pay GST with respect to that service is on the e-commerce operator, neither on supplier nor on recipient. So 9.3 you can see when applicable, 9.3 is applicable in case of notified goods and services. And what are notified? So we have list of goods and services. That goods are notified under notification number 4 of 2017 deals with list of goods under RCM, whereas notification number 13 of 2017 deals with list of services under RCM. So goods under RCM for 2017, service under RCM notification 13 of 2017. Then who will pay GST? As per section 9 subsection 3, liability to pay GST is on recipient, and how the supplier should be either registered or unregistered, that is irrelevant. Whereas 9.4 is applicable in case of inward supply by a notified registered person from an unregistered person. So the supplier is an unregistered person, the recipient is registered, and who is that notified registered person? So promoter or builder. So there is a promoter or builder who is making purchases from an unregistered person. As per notification 7 of 2019, that promoter or builder is required to pay GST under RCM on the inward supplies. And who will pay GST? Recipient. And how the supplier should be? Supplier should be unregistered. And next we have 9 subsection 5. There are some notified services which are provided through e-commerce operator. The liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator with respect to the transaction. Okay. Supply of notified services through ECO. What are those notified services? Remember, I hate. Remember, I hate. I for instant local delivery. So that's the latest amendment. So May 26 amendment, wherein usually lot of delivery apps now it is there, quick commerce apps like Blinkit, Zepto, or even this Porter, like that Porter parcel service, then previously Swiggy, Zini. So all these things, and even Dunzo also, it used to be there in the past. So Swiggy, Zini also in the past. So now there are many people who will be coming up into this instant local delivery. So this particular instant local delivery, wherein within the city, so within few kilometers, what they will do immediately, they will deliver the parcels like short parcels, and for which they will be collecting some delivery charges. So this particular delivery charges, again Blinkit and Zepto, we are not talking about sale of goods, but they will be levying some delivery charges. Now about the delivery charges I am talking about, so that is also now taxable. Suppose if it is through e-commerce operator, for example, I am a delivery partner and I am providing services through e-commerce operator for which I collect some delivery charges, say delivery partner fee. So what is the treatment of the delivery partner fee? With the delivery partner will pay GST or the e-commerce operator will pay GST? E-commerce operator will pay GST, that is with respect to this. So just remember, the delivery partner fee which is collected by the delivery partner when they are providing delivery services through the e-commerce operators, the liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator, that is this instant local delivery. I gave an example of Swiggy, Zini, but it is little outdated example. So we have other people also into this. Then second we have housekeeping services. Housekeeping services example, urban company. So urban company which will be providing plumbing services, carpentry services or cleaning services, etc. through e-commerce operator, liability to pay GST is on that e-commerce operator, urban company, not on the technician who is providing the services. Same way accommodation services. Accommodation service like Go Ibibo, Make My Trip, OYO, etc. the supplier will be accommodation service provider like hotel, and these people are e-commerce operator, and the recipient will be the guest who stays in that hotel. Again, the supplier will not pay GST, but the e-commerce operator will pay GST. T for transportation of passenger service. So transportation of passenger service by any motor vehicle, like we have Rapido or Ola, Uber, etc. In that case, the supplier will be the driver, and these people are e-commerce operator, and the recipient will be passenger. Liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator. And E for eating food from a restaurant and Swiggy, Zomato. In that case, the supplier will be the restaurant which will be selling food through e-commerce operator, and the e-commerce operator will pay GST, not on the customer, not on the supplier. Okay, but in these 5 services, IHATE, if I for instant delivery, H for housekeeping service, A for accommodation services, T for transportation of passenger service, E for eating food in restaurant. In these 5 cases, first 3 cases, IHA, in that IHA, the supplier should be unregistered, then only it is notified under 9.5. What if the supplier is registered? It is not notified under 9.5. Whereas the other 2 cases, T and E, transportation of passengers and eating food in the restaurant, the supplier may or may not be registered. Always the liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator. So if the restaurant is registered and supplying food through Swiggy, or the restaurant is unregistered and supplying food through Swiggy, the liability to pay GST is on the Swiggy only, not on the restaurant. That is this meaning. Same way, I am a driver and I am registered providing services through Ola, so Ola only will pay GST. I am an unregistered driver providing transportation through Ola, again Ola only will pay GST. That is with respect to this. Then what are the list of notified goods covered under RCM notification number 4 of 2017. So the list of goods which are covered under RCM is given under notification 4 of 2017, 9 subsection 3. So first you need to remember, so total 4 products, that is raw cashew nuts, raw cotton, tendu leaves and tobacco leaves. By whom? By an agriculturist. To whom? To a registered person. Then only it is RCM. Here the RCM itself is applicable if the recipient is registered. Not that the recipient is always required to get registered. So no compulsory registration here. The RCM itself is applicable if the recipient is registered. What if the recipient is not registered? Then RCM not applicable. If RCM fails, then it will be FCM. Then next, essential oils other than those of citrus fruit. Number 2, metal scrap. Sold by whom? Sold by unregistered person to a registered person. Then it will be covered under RCM. What if the conditions are not satisfied? Then RCM is not applicable, then FCM, like that. Okay. Then lottery tickets. So sale of lottery tickets by government to lottery distributor. But in this case, the supplier should be government and the recipient should be either registered or unregistered person, but he is a lottery distributor. Then it is covered under RCM. Whereas in case of sale of old goods, seized goods, confiscated goods or used goods by government to any registered person, so will be covered under RCM. Then finally 2 points you need to remember. Silk yarn. Silk yarn by whom? By a silk yarn manufacturer to a registered person. So by silk yarn manufacturer, not a silk yarn trader, by a silk yarn manufacturer to a registered person. And then priority sector lending certificate by a registered person to another registered person. So these are the list of notified goods which are covered under RCM, but the conditions are very, very important. Here whenever we say that the RCM itself is applicable when the recipient is registered, which means that first you need to check for recipient's registration. If he is registered, then only RCM is applicable, otherwise RCM is not applicable. But in some places by default it will be RCM, wherein the recipient is compulsorily required to get registered, like that. For example, services provided by government to business entity other than renting of immobile property, if it is taxable, it will be taxable under RCM. So let the business entity be registered or unregistered, it is RCM, which means the business entity has to take compulsory registration and they need to pay GST and RCM. That is the meaning of that statement. But sometimes the RCM itself is dependent upon the registration of a person. Means if that person is registered, then only RCM will be applicable. That is the meaning of this statement. Then we have some special points related to this. Supply of metal scrap. So whenever there is a metal scrap, that metal scrap can be any metal scrap. It can be iron, steel, aluminum, zinc, copper, any kind of aluminum, any kind of metal scrap by registered person to another registered person is not covered under RCM. Only unregistered person to registered person is covered under RCM, because metal scrap should be sold by unregistered to registered. What if both are registered? It is not RCM. If it is not RCM, then it will be FCM. However, this is notified for TDS, where the liability to pay GST is on the FCM supplier, but the TDS, the recipient has to deduct TDS at the rate of 2%. 2% on what? 2% on the payment remitted. So, however, the said transaction is notified for TDS under section 51, where the recipient is required to deduct TDS at the rate of 2% on the payment made to the supplier. Then agriculturist, we need to understand, because the first point, raw cotton, raw tobacco, like raw cotton, raw cashew nuts, tobacco leaves and tendu leaves by an agriculturist to a registered person is given. Who is an agriculturist? Very, very important point. Only individual or HUF will be considered as agriculturist. Others are not treated as agriculturist. A company or a partnership firm cannot be treated as agriculturist, only an individual, and they should be either engaged in cultivation on their own, or they need to get it cultivated through hired labor or through family members. Then they are called as agriculturists. And we need to remember one point. So agriculturist is exempted from registration. For example, I am an agriculturist. I am making sale of raw cashew nuts to an unregistered person. Then it is not covered under RCM, because only agriculturist making sale to a registered person is covered under RCM. So if I am making sale of raw cashew nuts to an unregistered person, it is covered under FCM. So, but am I required to register and pay GST? No, because as per section 23, an agriculturist who is predominantly or primarily or entirely engaged only in supply out of cultivation of land is exempted from registration. So they are not required to get registered, but the charge will be FCM. The charge will be FCM, but they are not required to pay GST. That is the meaning of that statement. Then RCM and TDS on supply of metal scrap, a convergence. So supply of metal scrap falling under these headings. So we need to first see who is supplying it, by registered person to registered recipient. So supplier will be registered, recipient also registered. Is it FCM or RCM? FCM. TDS applicable or not applicable? TDS applicable. Suppose if the supplier is registered and the recipient is unregistered, then in that case, as the supplier is registered, the recipient is unregistered. So is it FCM or RCM? FCM, and the TDS is not applicable. Suppose if the supplier is unregistered and recipient is registered, RCM is applicable and TDS is not applicable. Why TDS is not applicable? TDS is not applicable because if the supplier is unregistered, TDS is not applicable, and even if the recipient is unregistered, how they can deduct the TDS? So TDS cannot be deducted in this case. So that's the reason why TDS is not applicable. And suppose if supplier is also unregistered, recipient also unregistered, first of all there is no GST, so it is FCM only. If it's not RCM, it will be FCM, but there is no GST because the supplier is not registered. So first the charge, thereafter we need to check the registration. Suppose if it is FCM, check the registration of the person. If the person is registered, they will pay GST, otherwise there is no GST. And of course TDS is not applicable because the supplier is unregistered. Then maximum rate of GST is 40%. At present it is relevant because previously also maximum rate was 40%, but they have not given it effective for all the goods, but now they have increased the GST rate for many cases to 40%. So maximum rate of GST is 40%, CGST 20, SGST 20. Generally GST is payable by whom? By government, like by supplier to the government, to government by supplier. Therefore, if a supply is not covered under 93, 94 or 95, then the liability to pay GST is on the supplier under forward charge mechanism. Suppose if the supply is covered under RCM, then the recipient is required to pay. Just because the supplier has paid the liability, the recipient is not exonerated from payment of GST. For example, you are my recipient, I am paying the GST. Actually you should pay, but I am paying. Whether you are relieved from payment of GST? No, you have to pay the GST. It amount to short payment or non-payment of GST by you. You have to pay this along with interest and penalty. But in my case, I have excess paid, so I will get the refund with respect to that. That is this. In such case, recovery of tax can be initiated by department on the recipient for non-payment of GST. Then one more important point, GST under RCM should always be paid through electronic cash ledger. For example, if your gross liability is 1 lakh and you have an ITC of 1,20,000 and your ITC 1,20,000, so what is your gross liability? The gross liability under FCM. The gross liability under FCM is 1 lakh. And the ITC will be 1,20,000, 1,20,000. RCM liability is 15,000. If you see logically, 1,15,000 you have the liability, 1,20,000 you have the credit. So can we use 1,20,000 for payment of this entire 1,15,000? No. Out of this 1,20,000, first we will use 1 lakh for payment of GST. The balance 20,000 we cannot use for payment of 15,000. That 20,000 will get carried forward, and this 15,000, whatever is there, that you have to pay using cash ledger, which means that GST under RCM is always payable using electronic cash ledger. Next we have section 9 subsection 3, list of notified services, where the liability to pay GST is on recipient. So whenever you are writing about RCM, remember this section 9 subsection 3 read with notification number 13 of 2017. The list of services are Sir CG Govt Services, So we have to first see what is that service, who is the supplier, who is the recipient, and is there any exemptions, is there any condition for RCM, and non-applicability of RCM, that is exceptions to this. Okay, so first yes, for security lending services, who is the supplier, lender of the securities, who is the recipient, borrower of the securities. So in that case, who should pay GST? The borrower has to pay GST under RCM, that is this. And this particular security lending is covered under the scheme of SEBI, and wherein it usually happens through the stock exchange. We don't have any exemption with respect to this, no condition for RCM, no non-applicability of RCM. Then I for import of services. In case of import of service, supplier is a person located outside India, recipient is a person in India, and where is the place of supply? Should be in India, then it is import of services. And in that case, we have two exemptions. Exemption number one, if it is import of other than OIDR services. OIDR services means online information database access and retrieval service, any service which is mediated through internet. So over online information technology network, then it will be called as OIDR services. Mainly information technology network should be in place and it should be through internet. The service needs to be provided, then it will be called as OIDR services. And if it is OIDR services, we don't have any exemption. Other than OIDR services imported by non-taxable recipient. Non-taxable recipient means individual who is unregistered, importing for personal purpose, and then government, so which is like registered or unregistered, importing for other than business or commerce, trust, which is importing, trust again, registered or unregistered, which is importing for charitable activities. So remember, individuals, trust, government. These three people will be called as individuals. We are individuals. Whom we trust usually? Government only we trust. So individuals, trust, government. So will be covered under three cases. Non-taxable recipient, where the liability to pay GST will not arise because it is exempted. Import of other than OIDR service by non-taxable recipient is exempted. That is the first exemption. Second exemption is import of services by an Indian establishment of a foreign airline company. There is a foreign airline company, it has an Indian establishment in India. That Indian establishment is importing the services from their head office outside India without consideration. So it is supply under 7(1)(c), import of services without consideration from another establishment. They are another establishment located outside India. So it's an import of service without consideration, supply 7(1)(c), but it is exempted, provided the same reciprocal exemption is given to the Indian Airlines foreign establishment. Indian Airline will have a foreign establishment and they will be importing services from India. So that country should give the reciprocal exemption, and the Ministry of Civil Aviation should certify that this reciprocal exemption is given, then it is exempted. So these are the two exemptions with respect to import of services, and we don't have any condition for RCM. Generally, import of service is RCM, but we have one non-applicability, that is import of OIDR services by non-taxable online recipient. So there is a non-taxable online recipient, that is any unregistered person, or a registered person registered only for deducting TDS. So registered person only for deducting TDS is government department, central government, state government department, local authority, government society or government agency, they will be covered there. Okay. So then in this case, the particular supplier outside India, for example, I am an individual who is unregistered, I am importing Amazon or Netflix services. In that case, I will not pay GST, the supplier outside India will pay GST, that is this import of OIDR services by NTOR, non-taxable online recipient. Then SIR, R for renting of motor vehicles. When it comes to renting of motor vehicles, we have four exemptions. First, I have a motor vehicle that can carry more than 12 passengers that I am giving on rent to a state road transport undertaking, any kind of motor vehicle, but the capacity should be more than 12 passengers. I am giving on rent to a state road transport corporation. Second, I have an electric motor vehicle. That electric motor vehicle can carry more than 12 passengers, and that electric motor vehicle I am giving to a local authority, and it should be very, very important, only electric motor vehicle, other motor vehicles not allowed. Then I have a motor vehicle that can carry goods like lorries, dumpers, tippers, etc., which I am giving on rent to a GTA, goods transport agency, so then only it is exempted. Number 3, I have a motor vehicle, and that is bus, so which is given on rent to a person who is providing transportation services to an educational institution. So I am renting to one person. That person is doing transportation to an educational institution, providing education up to 12th standard or equivalent. Then my service is exempted. Even that person who is providing service to educational institution also exempted. The educational institution which is providing the service to the students also exempted. But which educational institution? It should be an educational institution up to 12th standard or equivalent, that is category 1 educational institution. In other cases, renting a motor vehicle will be taxable, and we have three conditions for RCM. supplier should be other than body corporate. Body corporate means private limited company, a public limited company, or body under any law for the time being in force like RBI, SEBI, even ICI. So all these are body corporate. So supplier should be other than body corporate, and the recipient should be body corporate, and the rate of GST should be 5%. If three conditions are satisfied, then only RCM. Any one condition not satisfied, then it will be FCM. Usually 5% will be applicable if the cost of fuel is included and they are not taking ITC. The renting will be taxable at 5% as well as 18%. But 5% has two conditions. Number one, they are including the cost of fuel and they are not taking ITC on any inward supply other than in similar line of business, like that one point is there. Okay. Then next, renting of immovable property. In case of renting of immovable property, so first we need to see residential property. For residential property we have three exemptions. Number one, so residential property for residential purpose to an unregistered person, any unregistered person, but it should be for residential purpose and it is exempted. Number two, renting of residential property for residential purpose to a registered individual for their family stay. So that is exempted. Number three, accommodation services. That accommodation services will be, for a minimum stay of 90 days. The minimum stay should be for 90 days, subject to maximum 20,000 rupees per month per person. So per month per person, then only it will be exempted. If it exceeds 20,000, then entirely it will be taxable. And if the minimum stay is not 90 days, less than 90 days, then also it will be taxable. That is with respect to residential property. Whereas commercial property, we have only one exemption, that is this accommodation point. So this accommodation services, let it be a residential property or commercial property, we have the common exemption. Then residential property, after these three exemptions, in remaining cases it will be taxable. For residential property, we have only one condition for RCM, that is recipient should be registered. So therefore remember, renting of residential property for residential purpose. So residential property for residential purpose to a registered person will be coming under RCM. Okay. So therefore RRRR, that is residential property for residential purpose to a registered person is covered under RCM. Okay. Then next, commercial property. When it comes to commercial property, so two conditions are there. Supplier should be unregistered and recipient should be registered but not opting for composition scheme. Mainly what will happen is that there are a lot of businesses which will be taking immobile property on rent, and they on commercial property, basically they will be paying the rent, but their property owner will not be registered, because that particular rent what they are collecting, they will tell that this is the only source of income and it does not exceed 20 lakhs, so therefore we are not required to pay GST like that. That's the reason why they have brought it now under RCM, where the supplier will be registered and the recipient will be registered. So therefore the recipient has to pay GST under RCM. However, if the recipient is opting for composition scheme, they are given the benefit wherein whenever they are taking the immobile property on rent, they don't have to pay any GST under RCM. That is this. So supplier is unregistered, recipient is registered, other than those opting for composition scheme. If any one condition satisfied, what if the supplier is registered? No RCM. Suppose if the supplier is unregistered but the recipient also unregistered, no RCM. Suppose if the supplier is registered and the recipient is unregistered or registered but opting for composition scheme, then also it is no RCM. That's what. If any one condition fails, then it will be coming under FCM. So remember one flow chart, you can see that below in page number 31. So here there is a supplier who is registered. If the supplier is registered, yes, then it will be covered under FCM. Suppose if the supplier is unregistered, check the recipient. If the recipient is registered or not. If the supplier is registered, yes, no doubt it will be FCM. If the supplier is unregistered, then check the second. Is the recipient registered? So recipient also not registered, then conditions not satisfied, so therefore it will be FCM. But as the supplier is unregistered, there is no GST. Then next, supplier is unregistered, recipient is registered but opting for composition scheme, so conditions not satisfied, FCM. But as the supplier is unregistered, there is no GST. Supplier is unregistered, recipient is registered and not opting for composition scheme, then only it will be RCM. So this is the flowchart that you need to keep in mind. This is with respect to renting of immobile property. Then C for copyright services. So who is providing the copyright services? Copyright services refers to temporary transfer of intellectual property rights. So if it is original literary by an individual, dramatic works, musical works, artistic works. So these 4 copyrights: original related to books, musical works, artistic works, dramatic works related to story rating. But all these 4 copyrights should be by an individual. If it is by a company, it is not covered under RCM, by an individual. And we don't have any exemptions, we don't have any condition for RCM. But only in one place we have non-applicability of RCM, that is original literary by an individual. For example, I am an author of the book and I have given the book right to the publisher. You are the publisher, which means that you have to pay GST under RCM, but I cannot take ITC on my inward supply, because when our outward supply is covered under RCM, we cannot take ITC on our inward supplies. That's the reason why I have an option to pay GST under FCM. If I opt to pay GST under FCM for the next 1 year from the date of exercising the option, I should only pay GST under FCM. That is lock-in period 1 year from the date of exercising the option. Then next we have GTA services, that is goods transport agency services. For goods transport agency, we have 3 exemptions. Number 1, notified goods. What are those notified goods? 6 notified goods: agricultural produce, then food grains, including flours, pulses, milk and salt, then organic manure, newspapers and magazines, relief material for natural or man-made disasters, defense and military equipment. These are the 6 notified goods. If it is transported through goods transport agency, then the freight will be exempted. Who is a goods transport agency? Any person engaged in transportation of goods by roadways and issues a consignment note by whatever name called, then they are called as goods transport agency. What if they are not issuing a consignment note? Then they are not called as goods transport agency. Person other than goods transport agency or courier agency or instant local delivery, in all other cases, normal transportation of goods by roadways is exempted. Okay, so only for GTA it will be taxable, but for GTA again we have certain exemptions. Then first exemption, notified goods. Second exemption, if the recipient is individual or HUF or AJP or trust who are unregistered and not having factory. So 4 people: individual, HUF, trust, AO and AJP, but they are not having factory. Then recipient is registered only to deduct TDS. So in these 3 exemptions, so GTA service is exempted, remaining cases taxable. We don't have any condition for RCM. But non-applicability of RCM, we have 1 point. If GTA opts to pay GST under FCM for the next 1 year, that is financial year wise they need to opt. So for that financial year they will pay GST under FCM only, and that option they need to exercise between 1st Jan to 31st March of the previous financial year. So current financial year they can either go for FCM or RCM, but that financial year they cannot withdraw the option. Whichever option they have selected, it will be there. But author is not like that. They have to exercise option any date. From the date of exercising option, next 1 year it will be under NOFCM. And in these 2 cases, if the question is silent, you please assume that it will be RCM, because the default option will always be RCM. If the question is silent, RCM. Otherwise, if the question says that they have opted for FCM, then only it will be FCM. Also, one more point you need to remember: for GTA, if it is FCM option, again they have 2 rates. One is 18%, previously 12%, now they have updated it to 18%. So 18% is the rate of GST. So if it is 18% under FCM, they have 2 rates: 18% with ITC, 5% without ITC. Previously 12 and 5, now 18 and 5. 18% with ITC means they can take ITC on their inward supplies, whereas 5% will be without ITC, means they cannot take ITC on their inward supplies. Okay, but whenever GST is paid under RCM, it will be always 5% rate. The next one that we are going to discuss is government services, services provided by government to business entity. Whenever we are referring to services provided by government to business entity, we are also including central government, state government, local authority. Not only that, even assembly, that is legislative assembly, as well as parliament. And not only that, even court and tribunal. So all these services to business entity is covered under RCM. You might get a doubt. So court and tribunal services is exempted. Then what is the point in RCM related to this? Generally, court and tribunal is not exempted. It is excluded from supply, 7 subsection 2. But only legal fees collected by court or tribunal is excluded from supply. But if court or tribunal is giving any building, like their premises on rent, and whatever rental that they are receiving, that is not excluded from supply, that is covered under supply, and it will be taxable and it will be covered under RCM, like that. Okay, same is the case of parliament and state legislature. So government services to business entities, including service of parliament, state legislature, court or tribunal. And in case of court or tribunal, it is service other than legal fees, that is renting, etc. And in this case of government services, we have some specific exemptions. So total 14 specific exemptions we have. Number 1, Right to Information Act charges, RTA charges. So then number 2, interdepartmental services. So Right to Information Act charges, wherein when we are making an application to the government for some information, we need to pay some charges. That charges received by government is exempted. Interdepartmental service means one department of central government, state government to another department of the central government or state government, that is interdepartmental services. And right to use telecom spectrum. The telecom spectrum is assigned before 1/4/2016, and in that case both one-time charges as well as annual royalty will be exempted. What if it is assigned after 1/4/2016? Then we don't have any exemption with respect to this. Then right to use natural resources, that is allotted before 1/4/2016, so that is only exempted, and the two one-time charges is exempted but annual royalty is not exempted. Then right to use natural resources to an individual farmer, and it can be assigned any time. So what we have is only both one-time charges and annual royalty. So these are the three license related services provided by government to business entities. Then next what we have is merchant overtime charges under customs. So customs authorities will be working after office hours, they will be collecting some extra charges, that is exempted. Then safety certificate charges for issuing the safety certificate by the safety officer to establishments or factories which are dealing with public at large. Then consideration for tolerating an act. First of all, consideration for tolerating an act, if it is compensatory in nature or if it is penalizing in nature, that is not read as consideration and not a supply. Other cases it will become supply, but it will be exempted here. For example, you enter into contract with government to do the construction, you could not construct it on time, so for which they agree, and you have delayed it by 30 days, for which they are collecting some extra charges from you. So even though it is not compensatory in nature, penalizing in nature, but it is exempted. So why it is exempted? It is supply. It is supply, but it is exempted because it is clearly given here, consideration for tolerating an act. Then share of profit petroleum. Profit petroleum usually arises in a situation where the government and the leaseholder will form a joint venture, and the government will be giving the leaseholder right to extract petroleum crude or natural gas. That petroleum crude or natural gas which is extracted will be sold and revenue will be generated. Out of that revenue, so what will happen? First, the leaseholder will recover his expenses, that is called as cost petroleum. That cost petroleum recovery of expense is not treated as consideration, so that will not become supply. So it is not treated as consideration based on the CBSE circular. So due to that reason it is not a supply. Whereas the remaining royalty which will be taken by the government, that will be taxable. Now the leftover portion is known as profit petroleum. So profit petroleum means revenue from operations minus cost petroleum minus royalty. So the remaining profit will be shared, divided between the leaseholder and the government. That money which is received by the leaseholder, again it is not a supply because it is profit, not a supply. Whereas the money which is received by the government will be exempted. It is supply because they are receiving the share of profit for assigning the right to use natural resources. So that particular, petroleum crude and natural gas. So that particular share of profit will be exempted. So that is a share of profit petroleum. So for assigning right to extract petroleum crude or natural gas, government receives share in profit on extraction in addition to the royalty. Then registration charges under any law for the time being in force, like companies registration charges or vehicle registration charges or property registration charges, like that, any registration charges. And fee for birth certificate, death certificate, driving license, visa, passport. So these five: birth certificate, death certificate, driving license, visa or passport. Then guarantee commission. So basically, sir, guarantee commission is received by the government with respect to guaranteeing the loans given to PSUs, for which as government is guaranteeing the loan taken by PSU, so for which the PSU will pay a commission to the government, that is called as guarantee commission, that is exempted. Excess royalty collection contractor, government will appoint one person as the excess royalty collection contractor. So that person will be receiving the variable royalty from the leaseholder and will pay fixed royalty to government. So on the variable royalty, anyhow leaseholder will pay GST and RCM. So to the extent of variable royalty, it will be exempted. So therefore, if variable royalty is 40 lakhs, fixed royalty is 50 lakhs, 40 lakhs anyhow leaseholder will pay GST. So their excess royalty collection contractor emitting 50 lakhs. So out of that, 10 lakhs only will be chargeable to GST. Suppose if the variable royalty is 40 lakhs, fixed royalty is 30 lakhs, anyhow leaseholder will pay GST on that 40 lakhs. So therefore, ERCC is not required to pay any GST. So therefore, excess royalty collection contractor to the extent of variable royalty is exempted. Then fee for granting national permit to goods carriage to operate throughout India or contiguous states. So national permit charges. So permit charges or state permit charges, so will be exempted. Usually government will be collecting some permit charges for allowing others to go through, like the highways. So for which some permit charges, that yellow board vehicles, that charges will be exempted. These are the 14 exemptions we have. Apart from these 14, we have two general exemptions. Number one, government is providing services to a business entity and that business entity turnover during the previous year does not exceed threshold limit, but this exemption is not applicable in case of renting of immobile property. Then second exemption, so first one, so any other service apart from the 14 points. In case of the first 14 exemptions what we discussed, whatever may be the amount, whatever may be the case, fully it is exempted. But suppose if it is other services to a business entity, that business entity turnover during the previous year does not exceed threshold limit, then it is exempted. And value of supply does not exceed 5,000 rupees. What is this value of supply does not exceed 5,000 rupees? That is either this or this, not necessarily that both should be satisfied. So if the value of supply, government is providing services other than that 14 specific exemptions for which they collect a consideration, if the consideration is up to 5,000 rupees, then it is exempted. And in case of continuous supply of services, this 5,000 rupees should be seen for a financial year. Okay, and the second point is applicable even in case of renting of immobile property by government to business entity. So these are the 16 points we need to remember. 14 specific exemptions and 2 general exemptions. And do we have any condition for RCM? No, we don't have any condition for RCM. Non-applicability of RCM. In 5 cases, generally government services to business entities RCM. But in 5 cases, RCM is not applicable. What are they? Renting of immobile property to unregistered business entity. Number 2, that is Post, Department of Post Services, Department of Post, then railways, then transportation of goods or passengers, airport or port services. Remember, Department of Post, transportation of goods or passengers, Indian Railways, airport or port services, and renting of immobile property to unregistered business entity. In these 5 cases, government only will pay GST under FCM. RCM is not applicable. Then next we have O for overseeing committee services to RBI. So overseeing committee is appointed by RBI for the purpose of restructuring the non-performing assets with respect to the loans taken by various people, and these loans taken by various people from the banks. But tomorrow, if the banks is going for liquidation, then RBI will be questionable, for which RBI will appoint an overseeing committee. That overseeing committee will provide the services to RBI, and for which they get a commission. On that, RBI will pay GST under RCM, and we don't have any exemptions, and we don't have any conditions for RCM. Non-applicability of RCM also we don't have anything. Then T refers to transferable development rights, floor space index, or long-term lease of land. So I have the transferable development rights which I got from government because I lost my land or building. So I got the TDR. That TDR I will be giving it to the builder. So on which the builder will pay some consideration, either monetary or non-monetary. So the builder has to pay GST under RCM. And the landowner or building owner. Number 2, I have unutilized FSI, floor space index. In the given area of land, how much I can construct is known as floor space index, and I have floor space index unutilized FSI. So I have constructed only 1000 square feet, 2000 square feet I can further construct. So which I will be giving to the builder, for which builder will give me consideration. On that the builder will pay GST under RCM. I have a land that I am giving on lease. What type of lease? Long-term lease. Long-term lease means lease for a period greater than or equals to 30 years is known as long-term lease, for which I will get the upfront amount or lease rentals. On that I will not pay GST, the builder will pay GST under RCM. That is this. And there is an exemption. Proportionate exemption is available. That is, I am the landowner who is giving TDR, FSI or long-term lease to the builder, and the builder is using it for construction of residential units or commercial units, but proportionate to residential units it is exempted. So to what extent? For example, out of this, say 30% is used for residential units booked before completion certificate. To the extent of the 30% it will be exempted. Proportionate exemption to residential units booked before first occupation or completion certificate, whichever is earlier. We don't have any condition for RCM or non-applicability of RCM in this case. Then yes, for sponsorship services. Sponsorship services, we need to understand supplier is the one who is organizing the event and recipient is the one who is paying the sponsorship money. And we have an exemption. If it is sponsorship of recognized sporting event, so there is a recognized sporting event, to that recognized sporting event we are giving the sponsorship service. I mean, like the recognized sports body is conducting a sporting event and they are collecting the sponsorship money. That sponsorship money collected by them is exempted. Usually often we get confused between sponsorship services, wherein the one who is giving sponsorship money we will take as supplier. No, the one who is organizing the event is the supplier. The one who pay the sponsorship money is the recipient. So sponsorship of a recognized sporting event is exempted. What is a recognized sporting event? Event conducted by a recognized sports body. There are certain specified recognized sports bodies like National Sports Federation, Inter-University Sports Board, Paralympic Committee, Indian Olympic Association, Central Civil Services Culture and Sports Board, and we have finally Panchayat Sports Board. These are the 6 recognized sports bodies that will be there in exemptions. So these people receiving money as sponsorship money will be fully exempted. Others will be taxable. And do we have any condition for RCM? Yes. 2 conditions for RCM. Supplier should be other than body corporate. Only other than body corporate. Means they can be firm or sole proprietor, etc. So other than body corporate. And the recipient should be body corporate or firm. Then only it will be covered under RCM. Any one condition not satisfied, then RCM is not applicable. So look into the flow chart related to this. In case of sponsorship services, wherever it is taxable, first check whether the supplier is a body corporate. Yes. If the supplier is a body corporate, then it will be FCM. If the supplier is not a body corporate, then check whether the recipient is body corporate or firm. No. Recipient also not a body corporate or firm. Then also condition not satisfied, it is FCM. If both the conditions satisfied, supplier is other than body corporate, recipient is body corporate or firm. Firm includes LLP, then it will be RCM. Remember, for the purpose of GST, LLP will not come under body corporate, LLP will come under firm. Okay, that is with respect to this sponsorship services. Then A. So sir, CG got salads. In that, yes, we have discussed sponsorship in the salads. So A for agent services. There are total 5 agents. Number 1, insurance agent to insurance company. So insurance agent is a supplier, insurance company is a recipient, and the commission will cover under RCM. But we have an exemption. If that insurance agent is a business facilitator or a business correspondent appointed in rural area, the commission earned by the insurance agent will be exempted. Then we don't have any condition for RCM or non-applicability of RCM. Then recovery agent, but recovery agent providing services to bank, financial institution or NBFC. If the recovery agent is providing services to any other person, it is not covered under RCM, it is FCM. For example, recovery agent is providing service to a dealer, is not covered under RCM, it will be FCM. So only to bank, financial institution or NBFC. And we don't have any exemption for recovery agent. And condition for RCM, non-applicability of RCM we don't have. Then direct selling agent. Direct selling agent providing services to a bank or NBFC. Basically, direct selling agent will bring in the business to the banks. So these agents, we don't have any exemption, direct selling agent, but we have a condition for RCM. If the direct selling agent is an individual or a firm, so then we need to check. So what is the condition there? Supplier should be other than body corporate or firm. Means supplier should be individuals, then only it is RCM. What if supplier is body corporate or firm? Then it will be FCM only. If supplier is body corporate or firm, it is FCM. Other than body corporate or firm, only then it is RCM. Because basically if suppliers are individuals, so they are asking the bank only to pay GST under RCM. That is the point here. Then business facilitator. Business facilitator will do the remittance activities for the bank. So business facilitator provides services to the banking company. If they are working in rural area, the commission that they are earning will be exempted. So services by business facilitator in rural area is exempted, and we don't have any condition for RCM or non-applicability of RCM. Then agent or business correspondent to business correspondent. So there is a business correspondent and who is having an agent. Business correspondent himself is an agent. They carry out the operations of a branch in many places where the branch is not located. So this business correspondent will have an agent. So agent or business correspondent providing services to the business correspondent. In rural area, their commission is exempted. In urban area, taxable. Wherever it is taxable, it's covered under RCM. Where business correspondent will pay GST under RCM. We don't have any condition for RCM or non-applicability of RCM. Then next, SAL, L for legal services. Who? Legal services provided by individual advocate or firm of advocate. So to whom? To the business entity. So we have total 4 exemptions with respect to advocate services. Number 1, if the advocate, either individual advocate or firm of advocate, if they provide services to an individual, that is other than business entity, it is exempted. Who is a business entity? Business entity means any person engaged in business is known as business entity. To a person other than business entity is exempted. If they provide services to another advocate or firm of advocate, it is exempted. If they provide services to business entity whose turnover during the previous year does not exceed threshold limit, it is exempted. If they provide services to government, Central government, state government, local authority, government authority or government entity, not government agency, government authority or government entity, even then it is exempted. So these are the 4 exemptions. In this, if the supplier is a senior advocate, this point is not applicable. That is, to another individual advocate or firm of advocate is not applicable. For example, I am a senior advocate and you are another advocate or firm of advocate. Now, whenever I am providing services to you, so your client will be taken as my recipient and accordingly I need to interpret. If that particular client of yours, the ultimate litigant, applicant or petitioner is individual, then it is exempted. If they are business entity whose turnover during previous year does not exceed threshold limit, then it is exempted. If they are government or local authority, government entity or government authority, then also it is exempted. Like that, senior advocate who is providing service to another individual advocate or firm of advocate, we need to see the ultimate litigant, applicant or petitioner as the recipient to the senior advocate. That is this point. Next, here for arbitrator services. For arbitrator services, again, we have 3 exemptions. Number 1, arbitrator providing services to a person other than business entity, that is to individual exempted, to government it is exempted, and to business entity whose turnover during previous year does not exceed threshold limit, it is exempted. In other cases, it will be taxable. Wherever it is taxable, we don't have any condition for RCM or non-applicability of RCM. Then LADS, last 2, D for director services. There is a director who is providing services to the company or body corporate. So director services, the director is not an employee of the company, then only it will be covered. What if director is an employee of the company? Then it is excluded from supplying. So for example, like executive director or whole-time director or managing director, where the TDS is deducted under 192 in the hands of the company. So then in that case, it will be director and employee, so not a supply. Otherwise, director will be covered under supply. So where company or body corporate will pay GST under RCM, that is this point. We don't have any condition for RCM, but non-applicability of RCM, we have one point. If the director is not providing service in the capacity of a director, but providing in their individual capacity. For example, there is a director of a company who is having a immobile property. That immobile property they are giving on rent to the company. Now, don't interpret as director services because it is not in the capacity of a director. So you see it as renting of immobile property services. So director providing services in personal or private capacity. Then last, security agency services. Basically, security agencies like manpower agency who will be providing the security personnel. Security agency services to a registered person, we have an exemption. That is, if the security agency is providing services to an education institution which is providing education up to 12th standard or equivalent, that particular security agency services will be exempted. Category 1 educational institution, but the security service should be within the premises, okay? Then it will be exempted. In other case, it will be taxable. There are 2 conditions for RCM. Number 1, supplier should be other than body corporate and the recipient should be registered but not opting for composition scheme and not registered only for deducting TDS. If the supplier is body corporate, definitely it is FCM. So the first condition is supplier should be other than body corporate. Second condition, recipient should be registered, but they should not be just registered under composition scheme or registered for deducting TDS. So normal, regular registration they should be having. If any one condition not satisfied, then it will be FCM. So these are the list of services we have under 9.3 Red with notification 13/2017, where liability to pay GST is on recipient. Then we have 9.4. So 9.4 is applicable for a promoter or builder who is making purchases from an unregistered person. And remember, this 9.4 is applicable only in case of residential projects, because in case of residential projects, the rate of GST will be 1.5% affordable housing, 7.5% non-affordable housing without ITC. Means they cannot take ITC. The builder cannot take ITC on their inward supplies. So therefore, whenever they are buying from an unregistered person, they need to pay GST under RCM. So whenever we get a question related to that, we need to do it in 3 steps. Step number 1, first see the capital goods. So whether the capital goods is purchased by promoter or builder from a registered person, yes, then leave it. No need to pay GST under RCM. Suppose if they are buying the capital goods from an unregistered person, then they need to pay GST under RCM at the rate applicable to capital goods. Then cement purchased from registered person or unregistered person, we need to check. If cement is purchased from a registered person, then they don't have to pay any GST under RCM. See, capital goods, remember, they have to pay GST at the rate applicable to capital goods. If they buy cement from an unregistered person, then they have to pay GST under RCM at the rate of 28%, because the rate of GST for cement is 28%. Then we have to see third step, other inputs and input services from unregistered person divided by total into 100. If the other inputs and input service from unregistered person other than cement divided by total. While doing the total, take cement because that is also one of the input, but don't take 5. Number 1, TDR FSI long-term lease. Why? Because it's already covered under RCM under 9.3. So therefore you remove it. Then electricity also remove because it is exempted. Then petrol you remove because there is no tax on this. Then diesel also remove. Then we have to take out this natural gas because you use gas welding. So these 3 which are used in the construction, petrol, diesel and natural gas. So these 5 we should take out. So in the denominator, first balance input and input service from unregistered person divided by total. In the total input and input service including cement, excluding TDR, FSI long-term lease, electricity, petrol, diesel and natural gas into 100. If this is does not exceeding 20%, if it does not exceed 20%, then leave it because it is allowed. The balance can be from unregistered person to the extent of 20%. So no need to pay GST under RCM. If it is greater than 20%, for example 23%, then the 3% extra, because 20% is only allowed to be purchased from unregistered person. So extra 3% we need to pay GST under RCM at the rate of 18%, flat 18%. Even though the product is taxable at 5% or etc., we don't have to consider that, and we need to pay GST at the rate of 18%. GST payable under RCM on the excess over 20% at 18%, so under RCM. So these are the 3 steps that you need to keep in mind. So on that excess only we need to pay. On that extra, for example 23% means on that extra 3% only we need to pay GST under RCM at the rate of 18%. And above computation to be made on a financial year. Yearly we need to do, or up to project completion as the case may be. For example, if the project is taking 2 years, 8 months to complete, first year we need to make a separate computation, all the purchases. Second year again we need to make all the purchases, second year computation. Then in the third year for 8 months, we need to make a separate computation. So that's how it is. And you need to compute it project wise and determine how much is the GST payable. This is about 9.4 and 9.5. 9.5 is applicable in case of services, notified services supplied through e-commerce operator. And in this case, the liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator, but we have certain conditions, non-applicability, etc. and all. What are the list of notified services? I for instant local delivery, Swiggy, Genie, Rapido, Parcel, etc. And the supplier should not be registered or should not be liable to get registered. What if the supplier is liable to get registered? Then in that case 9.5 is not applicable. The supplier only will pay GST. So the supplier should be unregistered. If the supplier is liable to be registered, then in that case the supplier only will pay GST. 9.5 not applicable. Then H for housekeeping services, A for accommodation services. In case of first 3, IHA, instant local delivery, housekeeping services and accommodation services, the supplier should be unregistered. If the supplier is liable to get registered, it's not covered under 9.5. The supplier only will be liable to pay GST. Then T for transportation of passengers by any motor vehicle other than transportation of passengers, by company through omnibus. So generally transportation of passengers by e-commerce operator in any motor vehicle, liability to pay GST is on e-commerce operator, whether the supplier is registered or not, liable to be registered or not. However, one exception is there. What is that? If there is a company which is transporting passengers through omnibus, then 9.5 is not applicable. The company only should pay GST under FCM. So both 9.5 also FCM, normal also FCM, but who will pay? Supplier or e-commerce operator is what we need to check. And what is the omnibus? Capacity greater than 6 passengers. Means 7 passengers, okay, greater than 6 passengers, not equal to, greater than 6 passengers. So including driver seat, it will be greater than 7. So greater than 7 means 8 seaters. 8-seater vehicle is only covered there. And if transportation through omnibus by company only will pay GST. Then next what we have is eating food from a restaurant. So Swiggy, Zomato, etc. The supplier may or may not be registered. It's covered under 9.5. However, we have one exception. If the restaurant is in the specified premises, what is the specified premises? There is a hotel which is providing accommodation services. That hotel is providing accommodation service where unit accommodation is greater than 7,500 rupees per day. Any one accommodation. So if the restaurant is in the specified premises, that is in a hotel having value of supply, any particular day, if they are giving their room on rent for greater than 7,500 rupees, then it will be called as specified premises, like 4-star, 5-star hotels, etc. In that hotel, there is a restaurant that is providing supply of food through e-commerce operator, then the restaurant only will pay GST, that is this. And look into the important points. Whenever e-commerce operator is liable to pay GST, then 95, under 95, that is this I hail, then TCS is not applicable. Tax collector at source under section 52 is not applicable, which means section 95 and section 52 are mutually exclusive. Then only in case of notified services, e-commerce operator will pay GST. But if there is any supply of goods or other than notified services through e-commerce operator, for example, if I am selling goods to Flipkart or Amazon, or if I am providing any other services like Book My Show or District, where the booking, movie ticket booking is through e-commerce operator, that is not covered under 95, where the liability to pay GST is on supplier only. Then every e-commerce operator who is liable to pay GST under 95 or liable to deduct TCS under section 52 is compulsorily required to get registered. Irrespective of their threshold limit, they need to compulsorily get registered. And supplier of goods through e-commerce operator. So supply through e-commerce operator, we need to divide into 3. Supply of goods through e-commerce operator, supply of notified services through e-commerce operator, supply of other than notified services through e-commerce operator. In these 3 cases, the e-commerce operator should definitely register, because in case of notified service, they only will pay GST. In the first and last case, they will be required to deduct TCS. So they will be required to get registered compulsorily, whereas the supplier of goods through e-commerce operator is also compulsorily required to get registered, because, but they have a relaxation. What is that? If I am a seller selling goods through e-commerce operator, but if I am making only intrastate supplies, I don't have to compulsorily register. I need to obtain a unique enrollment number, and I need to register only when aggregate turnover exceeds threshold limit. If I am making interstate supplies as well as intrastate supplies or fully interstate supplies, then I have to compulsorily register. That is this point. But services provider. So if there is a service provider who is providing notified services or other than notified services through e-commerce operator, then the liability to pay GST is on, that is either any person, supply of services through e-commerce operator, any notified or other than notified services, whomsoever pay GST, but the supplier of services is required to get registered only when aggregate turnover exceed threshold limit. So notified services or other than notified services, they need to register only when aggregate turnover exceed threshold limit. And wherever e-commerce operator is liable to pay GST, first we need to check whether they have a physical presence in India. If they have physical presence in India, then they will register and pay GST. What if they don't have physical presence in India? Check whether they have a representative in India. That representative will register and pay GST. What if they neither have physical presence nor they have a representative? Then they should appoint a representative in India. That representative shall register and pay GST. That is with respect to this. If e-commerce operator having physical presence in India, they shall register and pay. If they don't have, then their representative. If they don't have a representative also, they shall appoint. It is mandatory that they will appoint a representative, and that representative shall register and pay GST. So these are the points we have with respect to levy and collection under CGST or charge under CGST. Thank you.